Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart and welcome to my Blackseas project vlog number 2. Now it's been a couple of weeks I think since I did the last project vlog, but I have been chipping away at some things alongside lots of other projects that I have going on, and if you're aware of the channel and regular follow, you'll see all the different themes and historical projects and things I've got going on. But anyway, on the desk at the moment, or on my table at the moment, you can see a pretty good selection of some of the things I've been getting on with, playing around with in the background, a mix of terrain and sort of finishing off my second ship and playing around with some different ways of rigging and basing. But let's take a closer look at some of the terrain things first. So some of you may have seen the terrain at the front already. I did a short review for Warpaint Figures' new Naval Ranger terrain. They very kindly sent me a few little bits. There are some islands as well which I haven't painted or used as yet, but these are the ones I did have time to paint up. Very useful as well, something I didn't have in my own collection, having already made some islands myself, which you saw in the previous video. But they're just formations of rocks in these nice little sections of sea, and they look quite nice when you place them in the middle of the table, etc, etc. And then moving on from that, we have this here. So I think I mentioned in the first vlog that while I'd made some islands, that I also had a very cheap MDF fort which was designed for blackseas, and it was a fully wooden set with a fully wooden kind of rock face, etc, etc. And when I started looking at putting it together, it wasn't quite good enough for me. I didn't, it wasn't terrible, but considering I wouldn't think it would really fit in with the other bits of terrain that I'd already made, I thought the rock would stand out versus the foam I made. So I started looking at it, and I decided just to sort of take parts of it and build it up using foam as well. So I kind of took the bottom of it, the wooden base, I stuck some blue foam hills I had already. This is how I made the original terrain. I took a blue foam hill, which I'd already sort of carved off an angle in one way and then snapped it back the other way, which gives you the nice kind of rock edges you get, the cliff edges. Cut that and placed it on the base, so I still had the dock and the jetty and things like that, and then I kept the actual fort part of it. Now it's built up in layers. It didn't seem to matter how I layered it, they didn't really match up very well, and even on the photos from the eBay page where from the seller, again they don't seem to match up perfectly either. So I sort of gave up with that a little bit. I did put some texture paint on it to try and smooth it a little bit, and I think I've made something that is passable, especially for this scale, and the focus is going to be on the ships anyway, and it is just a piece of terrain, but I think I turned it into something that is a little bit more fitting with the other bits I've already made, and this is painted the same way as the island, so it should fit in nicely with that. And I've pretty much now got enough terrain, I think. Now I have got those islands for Warpaint Figures. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those yet, but I do have the islands I've made, the rocks I've made, the outcrops and things, the rocks that Warpaint Figures sent me, and I think that's probably it, until I get to the stage where I want to do something thematic or something. Maybe I'm doing a campaign and I want a particular port or harbour, I really want to go into detail. I think I'm fine with what I've got. I'm happy with what I've got. I need to focus now on getting the ships together, and then once I've got some good fleets and I want to play some campaigns, as I said, I may go back and build a nice little Spanish village or a Caribbean village or something like that. I think that would be really fun to do, but I've got so many projects it would be madness to go down that route right now. Next up, let's talk about bases. So I can't remember if I talked about it in the first vlog or not, but I wasn't really sure what to do about basing the miniatures. Originally I wasn't going to bother because I think they look fantastic on the mat, but having kind of handled them a little bit, I realised that they were probably not going to stand up to it very well without some kind of base, and I wasn't sure I was a fan of the big resin bases that the Warlord do. They do look very nice, but again, it's more effort to paint something, so I wanted to look at acrylic ones. Practical wise, I think some of the square ones look very good. I've seen ones that angled at the front and back to help with turning and things. I just aesthetically I didn't like it, and I wanted to go for something as minimal as possible. And I was put on to these sort of tablet shaped ones. and I found the ones I ordered from Fluid 3D, and they do loads and loads of different sizes. But I've picked 3 different sizes to cover the sort of some of the different sizes of ships, really. So I've got these very small ones here. You can see where they've been cut out. It's clear acrylic, and they're backed on both sides. You peel away, and you end up with this kind of effect here, and you'll see close up of the ships in a moment when I talk about the next stage. Now they're not huge. I suppose the argument will be they're not wider than the most delicate parts of the ship, so they don't give you complete protection. But I really wanted something I could just still pick them up and nudge them around without having to touch the ship, so I didn't want to completely cover them. That's the size that I've gone for. Obviously you can use larger sizes, so the medium sized ones I've got here would be absolutely perfect as well for the brigs and so on and so on, but these are the sizes I've got to, so that happy medium of not dominating the model but also giving it a little bit of protection, and these are the sizes I've gone. So I can't remember the measurements off the top of my head. I wonder if it says it on there. 60 by 20 for the small ones. For the next size up it's 80 by 30, and the biggest ones I've got, so for my third rates, I've got 100 by 30, and they do go a little bit larger, but as I said, that's the size that I've gone for. Now I think I spent, it was £15-ish posted for all of these, so that's enough. It's not cheap, it's also not expensive either, and for the amount of ships that you have, this will do both sides for me quite comfortably, with a couple of spares left over for when I add some name ships and things, which is great. And the next thing I wanted to discuss was the water texture foam effect that I picked up to go just at the sort of the bow of the ship, just around the edges a little bit, just to show a tiny bit of wake on these bases, so they don't know they're just sort of floating, stand still. So I picked up this Deer Armour Effects foam effect from Vallejo. Now it's probably user error. I've given it a good shake. And I applied it, but it's very much just like a white paint, really. I expected it to have some body. Now I haven't gone and looked for their tutorials on the subject, and I have applied it to 2 bases now, so that's something I should have done maybe, so I can feed back to you, but maybe that'll be the next video. But I feel that I probably have missed something, and I should be using it with something else. And maybe I should be adding it to a water texture or something like that. So that's probably what I've done, and no doubt I'll get some comments on the video, so please do help me. But I figured that I could just apply it, and I looked at the effect. It says a heavy, extra opaque white acrylic, which can be applied directly from the bottle, has been formulated for simulating rise crests within waves. The product can be sculpted with a palette knife or dry brushed to form swirls and wakes on the surface. I think there could be more done with it, and I need to look into it. But on these small ships, I'm using it in this small area. I tried to use a rubber clay shaper to apply it, so I didn't ruin a brush. And I splodged it in okay, but it just felt like a white paint, really. And when it dried, a lot of it evaporated away, and it looks quite flat. And it looks fine, but I would have expected a bit more from it. I felt like I could have done this with just some Vallejo white paint. Now there's still room to go back over it and provide more body, which is what I wanted ideally. So when I do a bit of research, or based on what you say in the comments, maybe I'll be able to get it to work a little bit better for me. But as I said, at the moment, a little bit underwhelmed. Wasn't quite what I expected. And that brings us on to rigging. Now a friend of mine, Carl Woodrow, who's an absolutely fantastic painter, commented on the thread for my first video, and mentioned about using this easy rigging from Ammo. So I decided to buy a set and see if it made it any easier. The idea is it's slightly elasticated, and it makes it easier to stretch between your mask, etc, etc. So I grabbed this stuff. I grabbed the 2mm stuff. Sorry, the 0.2mm stuff. They do a slightly thicker, but I don't think it's much thicker. I think it's only 0.25 or something. I grabbed it, and I had a bit of a disaster, and this is my fault more than anything else, but I couldn't find the end, and then when I was pulling at it to try and get the end, it all came off, and I ended up with this horrible hairy mess. And that's it. It's so rubbery. I couldn't get back to what I wanted. But it's also, and you probably can't even see it on the camera, so fine that it's probably realistic in terms of scale, but you just wouldn't be able to see it. And then what's the point? So it was nowhere near the right thickness, that you can see maybe across the white there. It's nowhere near the thickness of the existing kind of thread that's provided by Warlord Games. So I thought, well, that was about £7-8 worth of fluff as well. But after I'd ordered it, I was chatting to a few other people, including Adrian, who I keep mentioning on my videos, and he did a little bit of research into it himself and said that he thinks it's the same as some other kit you can get out there, often used by railway modelers and things, called Easy Line, and he'd ordered himself a larger roll of that stuff, and it's much better value. And I managed to find some in the UK, and he sent me a link, and I shopped around, and I managed to find some from Model Scenery Supplies. And this is Easy Line, and again, this comes in different thicknesses. I went for a much thicker this time because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to end up with something too fine again. But this roll was much easier. This little spool here, and you can see it there. As soon as I let go of it, it didn't disappear, and it's not all knotted up. So in terms of packaging, I mean, it being usable, it's already better, and there's so much more of it here. I think you've got about 1 metre or 2 metres from the ammo stuff. This is loads and loads more. 10 metres of the stuff, so absolutely fantastic. Now, is it any good? That's the question. I think it is. There are some things that make it not as good as the regular thread. But for overall ease of application, it's definitely better. There are certain stages where it becomes a little bit harder. Now, the way you see it used, if you look at some tutorials, is to cut small areas, the right kind of length or a little bit longer, use small dabs of glue, attach to one end, and then stretch with your tweezers across to the other. And I'm not going to do a tutorial on this because there are some amazing tutorials online of people that really do it well. Proper high-end military modelers using it on aeroplanes, and I'm sure railway modelers will be using it as well, because I think they use it for telegraph lines and things like that. I wouldn't feel right doing a tutorial for it, especially when I've not mastered it, and I'm not going to master it myself. But that's one way of doing it. Obviously, that doesn't leave that kind of look of the rolled up rope and things. So I try to use it as a bit of a mixture, a bit like using the regular thread for rigging, so wrapping it round a little bit and then moving it on. But what I did find, we actually get the ship over where I've used it, what I did find is that you can kind of use it in a similar way, but it goes taut a lot better. Now that looks like that's over taut there, and that's pulling it over, but this stuff is incredible. There's no tension to it. It's not strong enough to pull that. That's just glued at an angle, and that's my modelling mistake. So there's a slight angle on it there, but yeah, this is very minimal touch there. You can see I'm just flicking it, so it's still got some elasticity to it. But I found that I did this rigging in 3 parts. No, 4, sorry, apologies, 4 parts. But more than 50% of it was one single sheet, and it was very easy to wrap round sort of once, put a little blob of glue on, then move to the next point, and then move down and move down and move around, rather than doing lots of simple stuff. Now, that was the method I was kind of using on my first ship, and for me, that works. To save my madness from using, doing all these small knots. I just haven't got the dexterity. It might seem strange for a commission painter, but I just don't have the patience and the dexterity to do all these tiny knots. I couldn't be a surgeon. No way. But I found that at times keeping them from going slack, or it was quite hard with the regular thread. So using that quick method of wrapping it round and moving on to the next point, and then finding where I can go next and do as much as I can without having to break the line and stop and start again. As I said, I did it in 4. I think you could do it in 3. I just made a mistake on one point, but it is a lot easier to do now. It's even easier to add this bit, which I did separately at the end. I had a small piece cut, I glued the flag to it, left it too long, a little dob of glue one side, waited for it to dry, stretch up, glue again, and then trim off the excess. And it was easier to add that little flag there rather than tying knots at each end I find it much easier where you can kind of get a pattern going and try and work your way through. So I'm going to keep using it. I think it's better. It's similar thickness if you go for the heavier, so that the 0.5mm stuff, but it's a little bit thicker, and it's not completely round. You can see it is sort of elasticated, so it does have a slightly different texture. So some people may prefer this for realism, but in terms of ease, I found it an awful lot easier. And you can see I've even added a couple of extra lines which I felt I couldn't be bothered to on this one. In fact, I've been back and added that one on there. And that brings me on to the final part, which you've already seen lots of already, but I did finish my second brig, and this time the French one, well, a French one, so I've got one for each side. Pretty much the same painting methods, just changed the kind of layout. We've used the guide in the main rule book really on colours, so still yellow and black like the British, but a lot more yellow and that a little bit of a blue accent really. So I'm just following the guide that was there. Still used a black prime with a zenithal highlight and then lots of contrast as my base, and then went back in and highlighted from there just to tidy it up a little bit. It's a method. I'm not sure if it's the best method for it, but it does make the colour stand out and pop a little bit. Flat colours and a wash and then highlight will work very well on these as well. It's just the method I'm using a lot at the moment, so it's becoming kind of almost second nature to start from that zenithal with the contrast colour base layer really, and there's, you know, there's more coming out at the moment as I'm recording this. There's more coming out at the weekend, so that range of colours is increasing, which makes that more and more useful and more likely. But anyway, I've got 2 ships now, so technically there can be a ship on ship battle, so I might get my son to play a little game now, but I will continue to try and build both fleets now in a kind of in a non-mismatch way. So I'll probably go and do a maybe treat myself to go all the way to a third rate. I'm not sure, but I'll try and keep the fleets fairly equal so I can start getting some games in. Well, there we are. Anyway, as I said, there's not an awful lot of progress there, only one more ship, so maybe I've been avoiding the rigging problem, but I've only had that rigging for a few days now, and that's what's sort of held me up a little bit. I've been waiting for that, and I wanted to make a decision about whether I was going to do that or stick to the original way of doing it. I do slightly prefer the aesthetic look of the using the proper thread, but the ease of the easy line is probably going to draw me in really, because I just want to get these boats done. I've been looking at the official group on Facebook a lot, and some people have put so much effort into the rigging. It looks absolutely stunning. I've got so many projects on. If this was my main project, if this was my thing, if this was my Napoleonics, or then I probably would be. But it's always going to be a supplementary game for me to fall within my favourite historical period, but it's always going to be a bit of an addendum, a bit of an addition to sort of that Napoleonic black powder era thing. So as much as I'd love to, as I say, do a bit more effort with it, I'm not going to have the best looking ships out there, but I hopefully will have some passable looking ships to put on the table. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I would love any tips on any of the points I've raised today, any experiences, your thoughts on easy line, your thoughts on water texture, and yeah, if I can make them look slightly better, that would absolutely be fantastic. It may well be I need another product just to build the waves up at the front before I apply that stuff afterwards. I was just being a bit lazy and hoping it was going to be an all-in-one solution. But I'll let you go now. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider giving us a like. It really helps. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and I'll catch you soon.